During the American Revolution, the British Empire lost one of its largest and most valuable colonies in North America. And this defeat is surprising. At the time, Britain had the most powerful navy in the world and one of the best professional armies on the planet. Yet despite these advantages, the empire failed to crush a rebellion in its own colony. So what went wrong? After a hard-fought victory in the 7 Years' War, Great Britain decided to replenish its budget in a rather simple way. It began introducing new taxes and duties in America. These now went not to the local budget, but directly to England. Beginning in 1765, Britain introduced new duties. People rebelled against them, and Britain repealed some of them, but in one way or another, it made it clear to the colonies that they had no say. After the tax was repealed on many goods, the Americans felt empowered and demanded the abolition of the tea duty. Rebellious sentiments began to brew among the population. After the outbreak of the rebellion, independence was not the primary goal for many Americans and their politicians. Initially, they wanted more freedoms and fair treatment. But as the rebellion increasingly resembled a war, the British were increasingly viewed as foreign invaders. This prompted an increasing number of people to take up arms, or at the very least, not support the British. One of the main reasons for the defeat was that, despite winning most of the battles, the British never achieved a decisive battle. At the start of the conflict, the British army numbered only 27,000 men. By the 6th year of the war, large-scale mobilization had swelled the British forces to 150,000. These were impressive numbers, but most of them had never fought in North America. By the end of the war, only 35,000 soldiers were stationed in the mainland colonies, and they were scattered across a vast territory. The Americans also lacked troops, but the British lacked the overwhelming advantage to inflict significant losses. Britain had two options: arm more loyalists or create an army from freed slaves. But neither option was implemented to the desired level. When British armies did capture cities like Philadelphia and New York, they were inevitably tied to garrison duty and unable to conduct offensive operations. As a result, British forces won most of the war's battles, but their victories only served to reduce their already limited manpower. They failed to destroy the rebel army and failed to convince the colonial population of the British Army's invincibility. The British Army was well equipped and trained, especially compared to the US armies. However, logistics exacerbated the Army's problems as it relied on supplies from abroad. Many supply ships suffered from storms, privateers, or enemy action. Thus, British armies were tied to the coast and rivers and had to hold major port cities at all times, lest their supplies be disrupted. In addition to the relative paucity of troops for warfare over such a vast territory, the British had no available troops for attack due to the threat of rebellion in captured cities. From the early to mid-18th century, Britain won 3 consecutive wars: the War of the Spanish Succession, the War of the Austrian Succession, and the 7 Years' War. In each case, the war was won because Britain led an international coalition against France and successfully formed European alliances. By the end of the Revolutionary War, the conflict between Britain and the rebellious colonists had escalated into a war between Great Britain, France, Spain, and the Netherlands. Now Britain itself had to confront an alliance, but one directed against itself. The entry of 3 of Europe's most powerful naval powers into the war fatally shifted the balance of power on the high seas against Britain. Furthermore, France and Spain had a particular interest in Britain's defeat, so America received more and more weapons, supplies, and most importantly, foreign soldiers willing to fight for it. These troops did not significantly change the course of the war in America, but the very fact that world powers were involved in the war against the British Empire forced it to shift its focus to Europe and India, where the main battles between Great Britain and France were now taking place. Attempts to secure the support of the Russian Empire and Austria were unsuccessful. Russia targeted the Swedes and Turks, and agreements with Austria, in fact, did not lead to military action. Britain's diplomatic defeat and the entry of the world's colonial powers into the war were perhaps the main reasons for their defeat in the American War of Independence. Subscribe to the channel for more history videos, and also check out my other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.